happy Wednesday to the world out there, and happy almost Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween. It is Halloween for me.
Technically, it's Halloween in some far-off places like Ross likes to live.
Yeah.
Is Halloween big in Japan?
God, man, that's like a complicated
Every
question.
day's Halloween in Japan.
My family it is. But no, I mean, Halloween is like last year, it's been steadily building up. Like when I first came to Japan, quick aside for our listeners. When I first came to Japan 23 years ago, the only thing that happened on Halloween was like some foreigners would ride on what's called the Yamanote line, the train line, which goes like in a circle around Tokyo, and they would ride that train. And then it slowly got bigger and bigger and bigger, especially in the foreign area, Roppongi, and then it spread into Shibuya, the young Japanese cool area. The last few years, it's really, really taken off. The last year and the year before that were like tremendously huge, and then this year, it's like a semi-official government crackdown on Halloween. Like they don't want it to happen in Shibuya because it was getting out of hand. Like a truck got turned over last year.
Whoa!
Wow!
And the thing is, you can regulate that without. I don't know. But so like it was funny because like all these stores that have these giant Halloween displays, and like even the stores. Clearly there's no law, but clearly somebody had been told. Somebody told somebody like kind of chill out a little bit about the Halloween because like stores which normally had a huge amount of costumes on display on the ground floor didn't have them this year, and it was much more subdued this year. But I still went to one Halloween party for my dodgeball group. There's still stuff going on. It's just not as big as last year.
Heads up, if you are in dire need of a Seahawks costume for tomorrow or your Halloween party, white wig, a phone headset you can find like at any electronic store, khakis, a Seahawks sweatshirt or hoodie, and a ton of chewing gum, and some like New Balance or actual Air Monarchs, and you got the perfect Pete Carroll costume.
Easy.
But yeah, it's almost Halloween. We're halfway through the year. Congratulations to the Nationals. They're World Series champions. It's like the 3 minutes of baseball I've watched all year. Sounders are going to play in the finals at home, so congratulations to the roommates of CenturyLink.
Finals for what? There's like 5 different types of soccer championships, it feels like.
This one's actually for the Major League Soccer Championship. So this is the playoff championship. Soccer MLS actually gives you a actual trophy if you have the most points in the regular season, which the Sounders did not get. So I'm sure Tony's happy, so shout out to Tony. Congratulations to your Sounders. But yeah.
Whoop, whoop.
But we're here to talk about Seahawks, and guys,
yeah, we are.
It's halfway through the year. The Seahawks are 6-2, and there's a ton of feelings about what 6-2 means. We're going to talk about that with the record and how good that is and like what people's expectations are. But let's talk about that game. So Seattle opens that drive. They kick a field goal. Atlanta costs the ball up. They punt back and forth, and then the Seahawks just turn into overdrive.
Wait.
What?
Give 2 more seconds of gratitude or acknowledgement to that opening field goal because Seattle doesn't normally score on its first drive. So let's make a little bit bigger deal out of the fact they scored on the first drive.
They scored on the first drive in Cleveland, so it's not like this is a rarity. So I do want to.
That's 8 games, dude. That's 8 games. That's twice. That's 25%.
Okay, well here, I do want to acknowledge that was. It looked like it was going to be a pretty solid drive because they were doing really well. They settled for a field goal. And then 2 drives later, once they get the ball back, they just marched and they were looking so solid. And the rest of that first half, it looked like the Seahawks could do no wrong. And they go up big 24-0. And they did it.
So they did like 48-0, right?
I mean, that's the logic, right? Right?
Everything that happens in the first half happens exactly the same in the second half for sure.
Yeah, it's just a mirror image.
But yeah, so like they drive down the field, the Seahawks, DK Metcalf gets 2, it looks like easy touchdowns. I mean, those were easy catches for him, not easy throws for Russ on one of them because he had a dude in his face, but I mean...
It also was like a little bit harder on Metcalf than you think because you have to acknowledge that even though he's a rookie, he made the right route adjustment.
And the other thing is he almost had a touchdown earlier, but he just couldn't. I think he got his feet in bounds, but he couldn't hang on the ball in the transition to the ground.
Well, his second foot never came anywhere near the ground.
Okay, so I wasn't paying attention to that, but yeah, he had an opportunity, and I think he's tops in the leagues in red zone looks. So I think he's doing pretty solid. That first half, if we just talked about the first half, I don't think anyone would be complaining about how that game went. But that's not what happened.
But then they decided to play the second half apparently. So yeah, and I've heard rumors you can't win the game in the first half.
Can't. You literally cannot.
I've tried, guys. They keep telling me you got to play another half. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, you got to go all the way. And this is like a really good example of that kind of thinking. I mean, no matter how good you think because we sometimes think of it in the negative sense, we've fallen behind. But it's the positive side as well. You can come out to that great lead, but you have to finish. You have to finish.
Well, what's interesting, Ross, I know you've always kind of talked about this, and we've talked about it back and forth, and we've mentioned on the podcast, but the other team is paid to play as well. You know, not every team is as bad as the Miami Dolphins, even with a 1-5 record.
And not only are they paid to play also, but they're literally trying to stop the other team.
They are.
You know what I mean?
They're trying to stop you. They're trying to score. They actually have their own ideas about what they should do. They have a whole coaching staff apparently on the other sideline, that's out there making plays and designing plays and making adjustments. They do all those things apparently.
Yep.
Yeah, it's hard to think about it because you think of the other team as not really real, right? Almost in a literal sense. Now that we're not playing Atlanta this week, they've just kind of disappeared out of your consciousness. So it's kind of hard to think of them as real people with real coaching staffs. But they do, and they get paid and everything. They're professionals.
It's amazing. It's amazing. That's kind of what it is at my job. I don't know what's that like at your job, but if I don't see people, they could still work even though I can't see them. It's kind of mind-blowing.
And my second favorite cliche, and this is kind of from Dave Wyman. I mean, everybody says it, but he loves to say it as well. Dave Wyman at 7:10 a.m., Seattle, Cairo, whatever. Football's hard, right?
It is not
really
easy.
Hard. So the second half, they make adjustments, you make adjustments, but if your adjustments aren't what the adjustments they're going to make, if they don't match up well, you got to be sort of a mind reader to know what the team's going to do. You got to get your right guys out there. You got to make the right play call. That's all incidental once the play starts, because then even if you have the right play call and the right play design, if your player doesn't execute, and there's 11 dudes out there, and sometimes one guy failing, not winning his assignment could blow up a whole play. So it's hard. So what happened in the second half then? What happened there?
Well, here's the thing. Before we even get to the second half, I want to kind of jump to the ends, and we'll backtrack. And I asked this to my coworker. So shout out to Chris Nee, not spelled like Nee, but that's his name.
Wait, his name is Nee?
Last name is Nee.
Like the Knights of Nee?
Yeah, more like the Knights of Nee than like a knee on a foot. But anyway, so the first thing I asked this guy, as we get to work, because we always talk Seahawks, he's a big sports guy, and I asked him, at any point were you worried that the Seahawks might lose? And I told him I wasn't. Even when it was a one-score game, even when it was a 10-point game, even when it was when we were up 13, at no point was I worried that the Seahawks were going to lose, just because that's not who they are. This year, they're not the team that makes mistakes. Maybe they make a mistake and they kind of let you back in, but they still don't let you come out ahead, because that's not what has happened in the games that they've played, where they haven't shot themselves earlier in the game, like we saw against the Ravens and the Saints. Were you guys worried that the Seahawks were going to lose this game?
Never, even for a second. I mean, I don't think the game was ever as close as some people, when you read newspaper accounts even, and when you read Twitter, if you do, because I don't really recommend it, or anything else, people act like the game became really close. It was never really close. It was never within two scores. It was never within one score again after we scored the second time. Never. But that's not the impression you get. People make it sound like, oh my God, Atlanta just about beat us there. No, they would have had to magically score within 2 points. Somehow get the ball back and then score again. That was never going to happen.
And that's just a tie. Zeb, were you at any point concerned that the Seahawks were going to lose that game?
I had moments of worry, but I don't. Nothing substantial. I don't panic. That's just I know this team well enough not to.
Well, but for you, like, what points were you kind of like, oh, what's going on here? Like, what moments did you come across where that was something that you were thinking about?
Well, when we started letting them do whatever they wanted to do for a little while, then it's like, okay. I mean,
can I attack that narrative for a second?
Sure.
Can I be a dick?
You can.
Because like that's the like it seems to be like the common perception of like in the second half they end up throwing for 460 yards, and it feels like they did whatever they wanted to do, but I think the reality actually was different from what it felt like in the moment, because they didn't. They ran screenplay after screenplay after screenplay, with occasionally mixed in with like a 12-yard middle route. They didn't have any long passes. They didn't have anything. They had to keep throwing the screen because that, and to negate the rush, because we actually were getting some rush at some point where they thought we would. They could move the ball, but it was all sort of like what the Seahawks defense always gives. If you want to run screenplays, you can.
Right. So here's what I'm not saying they could do whatever they wanted to do. I'm saying that when they decided to start throwing screen after screen, we couldn't stop them. Or we decided not to for a while.
It was just like we're up, it's 24-0. If you're going to do like 10-minute drives, okay, then you have time to do 3 of those and you lose. So,
right. No, I totally agree. And that's why, like I said, I didn't panic or anything. But
you panicked.
It's unsettling when, of course, and this is going to all automatically obviously tie into what we're going to talk about. But when you're up 24-0, you don't want to see the other team get back into the game.
If that's true.
So that's where I was at with it. I'm the guy that when I get the text during the game, oh my God, what are they doing? We're going to blow it. My response is always, no, they're not. Just be patient. Watch. It's going to be okay.
But I do forgive some of those people, because people who like.
Which side are you on, Ross?
I don't, like, I'm with you. I never really doubt. I've talked about that a little bit before. Like, I've learned my lesson, particularly against the Atlanta Falcons. That's the only game I've ever turned off on the Seahawks, and then I had to turn it back on, and they almost won. But like the people who do sort of give up or freak out or think they're going to get back in, I always just assume that they have been programmed by the Holmgren era, because that was a successful era. But there were games where like they literally would like fall apart, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There was so many. The more I look back at the Holmgren era, the more I respect it, but at the same time, like, its flaws become so obvious. Yeah. There were the games that came out, you could see they were going to be terrible, and there were the second half. Sometimes you're just like, oh my God, they're gonna lose this, aren't they?
Well, what's interesting is this Pete Carroll Seahawks team is not totally flawless when it comes to giving up scores. I think it was 2015 where we lost 4 games where the Seahawks were leading in the fourth quarter, and that's still when we had Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill, and Richard Sherman. So this Seahawks Pete Carroll teams are not immune from that. But to your point, Ross, like, yeah, this team is not perfect, but they're doing just enough to win, and that just enough is why they have such a razor thin, point differential. And I think for a lot of people, that's not making them feel like comfortable. Like they don't want to feel that way. They want to have like these big, juicy, fat, like blowout wins, and they can just kind of like turn the game off in the third quarter, which has never really been a Pete Carroll thing.
There were like 3 games in 2012 there were.
Yeah, and those games, like, what's funny is those games are like the first time that everyone said, oh, you know what, let's just give Russell the ball, see what he can do. And those are the games that we're talking about, but those are like few and far between now, because this is another game where the Seahawks give 400 plus passing yards, but they're 7-0 in that, and it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around that unless you kind of look behind the surface, kind of like what we were talking about. It's like, yeah, you can give up yards, but it doesn't matter if they're trying to come back, and there's just not enough time for them to do that, which is kind of what we saw in that Saints game. Seahawks tried to come back, but they're, it's a 60-minute game, not a 65-minute game.
Does it not do your head in a little bit, like, that people still harp on the yards and still think that passing's all that, and passing's much more efficient to win the game? And like, it doesn't, when they see that statistic, it doesn't even seem to give them pause, right?
I want to save that comment because we got a topic that's going to kind of cover that. So Ross, let's make sure we get back into it.
I didn't say that. This do-over.
So the Seahawks complete the first half of the year at 6-2, but questions about the quality of those wins are definitely in doubt. We're going to take a deep look at how they got there. We're going to hand out some awards midway through the year and talk about what the Seahawks need to do in the second half of the year. This is the Hawkscast podcast brought to you by the Hawkscast Forum. Check us out at hawkscast.com, Seahawks podcast, and Seahawks Forum on Twitter. But let's jump into topic number one. And Zeb, I want to ask you, can you tell how good a team is by their record?
No, you can't. I mean, and obviously at the end of the season, it matters what the record is, and that's going to show where they're going to be as far as playoff seeding or draft order. But it's obviously much more important to look at who they played, how they played them, how those games went. That's how you tell how good a team is, not strictly by wins and losses. Is a 14-2 team almost every time better than a 2-14 team? Yeah, absolutely. There's extremes, but when you're talking like this season in particular, right now, the Seahawks sitting at 6-2, that could be a little bit deceptive if you haven't watched the games, if you don't see how these games are being won and lost. You look at the quality of the opponent. I think we are ripe to see an improvement in the quality of opponent over the second half of the season. So if this team can go 6-2 again this season, I feel like that 12-4 record will be pretty accurate to how good this team is. But just looking at the teams that they've beat so far, I don't know that they're necessarily a high tier 6-2 team. We've seen better 6-2 teams than this for sure.
Ross, I mean, obviously this is a question about perception. And can you tell how good this Seahawks team is by their record?
I mean, oh man, it's a hard question. It sounds like such an easy question, but it's a hard question. Yes and no, like Zeb says, right? There's a lot. I mean, there's context to it, but at the same time, there's the other cliches and the other side of it. You can only beat the teams that are on your schedule, and yeah, we've had these 1-point victories and 2-point victories or whatever. But at the same time, we also talk about like if you're going to be a good team. Good teams win those 1-point games. They find a way to win the 1-point game. Good teams find a way to win the game when not everything goes your way. So there's all these like things that we say and axioms that I think are generally true, but when they apply to our own team, then we kind of hesitate because we want, like you said a few minutes ago, we want the blowout wins. I want the 45-0 wins too, but when I get the 22-21, I don't think that's a sign that we're not that good. I think it's a sign that the other team played well. You don't know how the matchup went. You don't know. I mean, you could be a good team and not blow teams away. I think also that when you're 6-2 and you're looking at the record, what does it mean? It means less when you're just trying to define that team at the moment because we're not the team we were in week 1. We're not the team we were in week 2. Like those 6 weeks ago is a world away, right? There's different personnel, there's different experience levels, things people have learned, people have gotten injured, people have healed, coaches have changed their thoughts, coaches have reevaluated players and what they can and cannot do. It's almost like you're completely different, not completely, but you're to a degree every week you're a different team. You're a new team. This week we won't be the same team we were that was playing Atlanta. I mean, obviously there'll be players who are playing who didn't play. And people IR'd, because, their tooth got hurt or whatever. But but we're not the same team. And so you can say, yeah, hey, you know what, 6-2, we're really, really not that good. But I think, in a sense, you are what your record says. You found a way 6 times this way to win. And so you are that good. And we still have, I listened to radio hosts this week saying, like, they don't have a lot of hope for the second half of the season because what's going to get better? Well, there's lots of things that are going to get better. The team is just going to gel. Players improve. Coaches know their players better. Playbooks get modified. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are automatically going to happen for us. And I think this coaching staff does it better than most. And I also think in this case, I think the Seahawks have held a lot back. I don't think when we get to week 15, 16, 17, we're still going to be in base defense every week. I think they're just not showing. They're not showing their hand too early. There's going to be more Penny out there. There's going to be our 2 other rookie receivers. They're going to get seasoned. They're going to be out there. So I think we're 6-2 because not only have we earned that record so far, but we haven't shown everything we can do. And that's my philosophy.
I think Ross, you're 100% correct in the fact that this is not an easy question because it does come down to what are you willing to kind of take a leap of faith on? Are you trying to say that 6-2 is a projection on how they're going to do for the rest of the year and they're going to match the next 8 games at 6-2? And obviously I don't think that anyone is expecting because we do think that there's going to be much stiffer competition in the last half of the season. But what I guess I have an issue with is when people try to project their opinions about the team, even though the team is doing well, is it's not the best way to look at what's going to happen because, as we stated earlier, every team that you're going to play against, they're not trying to lose for a draft pick still. They're still trying to prove themselves. They're still trying to show like, okay, I'm still worthy of having a job on this team, whether I'm a player or a coach. So it's not so much about how good this team is, but do they have the ability to win the games that they need to win? And I have a hard time looking at this 8 games that we've played where I look and say, like, you know what, they definitely should have lost that game and they definitely should have won that game. It's more like those were all the teams that we should have figured that they should have beaten. New Orleans and Baltimore are both division-leading teams. I don't think anyone thought that the Saints would be as good as they were without Drew Brees for, 5 games? And they go 5-0? I mean, that's insane. And it's not that Teddy Bridgewater is a bad quarterback. It's just that you would think that the drop-off between the two of them would have been too much.
Well, I mean, how many teams with their starters go 5-0 at any point in the season, right?
Right. And I think what it is when you look at what Seattle has done in these games, the only game that I would say that was a true toss-up, where I was like, I'm not really sure if Seattle can win this game, is that Rams game, because I thought the Rams were going to be a good team. And now the Rams are 5-3. They're a game behind Seattle for 3rd in the NFC. And people all of a sudden are like saying, like, oh, well, the Rams have won 2 games in a row. Maybe they're much better than, they just needed to, like, kind of kick themselves in the foot before they realized that they were that good. And it's like, if that's the case, then you've kind of missed your chance. And I don't think Seattle has missed the chance to win the games that they won. And it's not the fact that they're a good or a bad team. But they're 6-2, 8 weeks through the season, and I think that's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I think also, like, as fans, we expect a lot. We're really, really, really selfish.
I think there's slight, like, spoiledness to Seattle fans. They kind of expect, like, Super Bowl or bust, and a lot of people, if they don't see Super Bowl, like, have so many comments to say because everyone's all of a sudden an expert on the Seahawks, but they don't pay attention to what Pete is doing, and I think they don't see, like, the slight details and tweaks that he's made to the teams year in, year out. But the core of it's still the same philosophy, the same idea. It's like, look, we don't need to blow people out. We just need to win. And that's all that matters to him.
Yeah, there's more and more sign that Seattle fans are turning on Carroll anyway, which is sad.
I mean, it's 10 years in, so it's not a surprise.
I mean, it's weird because Americans generally hate the media. But now I'm seeing negative comments about how Carroll treats the media. Like, if you're complaining how your coach treats the media, but you hate the media, like where in the esteem level are they holding Pete Carroll at this point? It's weird.
I think it is a weird thing. But we actually have something that we're going to talk about that in a couple topics. So let's jump to topic number 2. So, Ross, I want to know, it's halfway the year. We're going to give out some awards. Which Seahawks is taking some hardware home right now? And is that same player taking some at the end of the year? Do you see your MVP, your Defensive Player of the Year, sustaining that through the season? Do you have a couple awards you want to give out?
Rookie of the Year is easy. That's Metcalf, right? That's a solid one. But you know what? He could lose that. I can see that Marquise Blair could just come on and be a gamer the rest of the season and make that close at least. I mean, Metcalf will have the advantage because he's played all 16 games hopefully by then. But Blair's only going to start maybe the second half. So it'll be tight. But I can see us saying, you know what, maybe Marquise Blair's our most viable rookie at this point.
He had a really excellent game against Atlanta for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he earned himself some time, obviously. I don't know, we're going to talk about that later, but starting is a possibility. He may not be there yet, but he's going to get a lot more time, isn't he? Offensive player of the year is always going to be Russell Wilson. I'm not going to change unless you wanted to go like, oh, MVP's Russell Wilson and like have a separate player. And right now that's Lockett, and I could see that change. I could go Chris Carson. And who knows? We get a second half of the season. I feel, again, what is one of those changes, I feel right now they've barely used Penny. He got a little bit more last game, and it's arguable whether that was, are we now in the part of the season where we're saving some wear and tear of Chris Carson, or were they showcasing Penny? Or both. So, I mean, there's a few things that could switch around, but I think mostly what you see right now is mostly what you're going to get. I have a hard time saying like, who the defensive player of the year is because I wouldn't say the defensive performance warrants like a MVP player there. I mean, everybody's kind of, sort of, almost done their job and not. I don't know. So I don't know. Hardware. I don't know. We're 6-2. We just said we're a good team, but I don't know who I would even give it to him.
Yeah.
Maybe Griffin.
Yeah,
I mean, he's much improved. Clowney, even though the numbers probably, if without him, we've probably lost 2 more games. It's so scary to think about, but it's probably legitimately true.
Yeah, I mean, he had that big pick 6 in Arizona, but that was, more than a 1-score game, so maybe that doesn't impact us. But
there was a game, I can't remember even now what it was, maybe the second game of the season, without Clowney, we lose that. He was the only one getting anything done on defense. He was the one harrying. I don't know.
The Pittsburgh game?
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Right now, to be honest, it's weird because, again, I do believe we are a good team. I just don't think because of the way they're playing and even like the style of play, nobody really stands out to. I'm not blown away by anyone. If I have to give awards, I can. Chris Carson or Russell. Even Bobby Wagner, man. Like, he made 3 amazing plays last game, but I don't really feel like Bobby's Bobby this year. I don't know. I'm going to hear Zeb's answer.
I mean, I don't think there's all that much to discuss. I mean, obviously Russell is playing at a MVP level. So if you're not separating MVP from offensive player, it's Russell, right? Otherwise, like you said, Lockett, Carson. Defensive, I think you have to go Clowney, even though I don't think he's running away with the award, but there's just not that. Griffin could be maybe considered most improved player. I think there's a lot of talk, not just in Seahawks land, but around the league, that Griffin is potentially a top 5 or a top 10 cornerback at this point. So,
given his performance last year, would you consider him in that category of comeback player?
I don't think usually comeback.
I don't think it's a
like
comeback
for like injury or a person who hasn't played all years.
I see like a most improved maybe type of situation,
yeah.
But special teams, I don't know that anybody's standing out on special teams at this point. Everything's been pretty up and down.
Give a quick shout out to Michael Dixon though. He had a great punting game.
He did
on Sunday. Like it's the first one that actually like sticks out to me because he had several punts that were just like perfect. Vintage rookie year Dixon, so a shout out to him.
Yeah, if he can punt like that for the rest of the season, we'll be in pretty good shape. But he's had an up and down year so far, as has Myers. So
Tony's saying that Dixon got called out by Ross, and that's why he's doing better. So we need more of that, Ross. You gotta
Ross,
put a couple people on blast.
Seriously, dude. I mean, like that guy needed that game. He really. I think some of us have already forgotten what a weapon he was last year.
No, for sure. I think that's the thing that was kind of disappointing is that he had a pretty mediocre start to the year.
And it's a missing component when we're evaluating some of Pete Carroll's 4th down decisions at this point. Maybe he's not just playing with previous year's defenses. Maybe he's thinking about like Michael Dixon, what he knows Michael Dixon can do rather than what he's been doing this year.
Yeah.
If you're at the 40 and you think you can pin him literally at the 2, that's a great thing. You're thinking even potential safety, aren't you? But if you're thinking Michael Dixon 2019, maybe inside the 20. This changes the calculus a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty much like 100% in line with all of you guys. And I think it's kind of to Ross's point. It's like, because no one is like standing head and shoulders above anyone else, everyone's kind of just doing their job at the minimum requirement. So no one's like really like knocking down doors and blowing people away, except for Russell Wilson. So he's my MVP. He's my offensive player of the year. My defensive player of the year is Shaquille Griffin, because he's just been lights out. He's been so lights out that they're not even passing to his side. I mean, that's vintage Sherman, where they're basically saying we're giving up a quarter, a third of the field because we're just not getting anything. So I would definitely put him as most improved from where he was last year, because I thought he had a really solid rookie year. He kind of had a down year last year, but this year I think he's been amazing. I think DK is easily the rookie of the year, and Ross has got me really hot and heavy about the idea that Marquise Blair could be the person to take away that rookie of the year mantle from DK. DK's got 4 touchdowns. I mean, that doesn't sound like a whole lot when you think about like the life of, you know, some of these superstar quarterbacks and these receivers they pass to, but that's tied for tops in the team, I believe. I think the only person that has more is Will Dissly, and he unfortunately is injured. But those
I want to just point out that I predicted DK Metcalf would have 600 yards. He's on pace for 800. 6 touchdowns on pace for 8. 6 touchdowns on pace for 8. So basically, he's beating everything by like 30% or so.
And I honestly think he should improve as the season goes on. So
you would think so.
Well, the thing that's crazy is, like, especially those touchdowns that he scored yesterday, those were not just like simple go routes. Those were smart routes that he played the coverage. And Russ, you know, congratulations, because he found him. Like the second touchdown where he was basically just left alone under, like, just to the right of the goalpost, that was insane. Like how does a guy that big get that open?
Football savvy, man. Like he just broke that route. He took the alternate route.
Yeah, and you know, congrats to Russ for finding him, because I mean he's a huge dude, but like there was a dude like all over Russ on that play. So if that's more of what we can see, it's really impressive. And also I wanted to do a shout out, even though I didn't give an award to Tyler Lockett, he had 2 amazing grabs with great coverage on him. I feel bad for the dude that was covering him, because one of those plays, Tyler just like plops it one-handed, like ain't no thing. I'm just gonna pull this down here real quick. And like what could you do?
That's the thing. Like I want to be like in that guy's position group meeting on Monday when they're film and see like the coach trying to evaluate and going like, you know what, you were there, you had the position, your arms were, you had the right technique, but you still give up the catch. So where you get a C-.
Right.
Like that totally deserves like a B+. But at the end of the day, did you get it done or not? Like you didn't get it done somehow. Yeah,
and the thing that's crazy is most of the time you say, oh, that corner didn't turn his head and he was in perfect position, he could have put a hand up. No, like there's nothing that he could have done on both of those plays.
No, there's nothing. I mean, like the announcer said it, like if you have a perfect throw and a really good catcher, like there's actually nothing you could do to defend it. So I hope that guy didn't get downgraded, because I'd feel bad.
Yeah.
And I want to introduce another piece of hardware. We know that the Seahawks fans are the 12th man, so I guess for this case, I want to call it the 13th man. Who's our 13th man? Like a guy who's not a starter, but like contributes from off the bench every game. Who's your 13th man award winner?
Oh, who's my? Yeah,
off
that's
the bench. Like in basketball, it's like the 6th man, right?
George Fant. If he gets a catch, he's a lock. That's the only thing holding him back this year. He cannot stumble this year, though.
Second half of the season, who I think is going to be a candidate, because he's a starter now, but I think is going to lose that, is going to be Bradley McDougald. I think he's going to have a really important place in the defense, but I think they're going to go back to what they did before with him, whereas he's like the super valuable third safety.
Yeah, he's going to be like that bandit defense that Pete Carroll like busted out like when he first came over.
Like when they had to really convince him to come when he first came over, because we still had Cam and we had Earl, and he's like, dude, I'm a starter. And Pete Carroll's like, yeah, you're a starter. You're just not starting.
Right.
You get used. You're going to get plays. You're going to get to play both positions. You're going to be really, really valuable. And I think he's going to slide back into that as the season goes. Maybe not even this week, but within 2 weeks, he'll be there. I think.
Well, it doesn't sound like Diggs is going to play again, so
Yeah, you got another. He's got still nursing a hammy for some reason.
Jesus, all these people we traded for to contribute, and they're not going to contribute.
I think Diggs may be more of a long-term thing than a
I
now
want him
fix.
now.
I do too.
Him now.
Yep, I want him in me.
I want to.
My body is ready.
2017 Ansa. I want. Oh man.
Yeah.
Where did you read that he's not playing this week?
He's on the injury report. He's got a hammy.
He's doesn't sound like he's quite ready.
Bastard.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll save him for November.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got a hardware out, so let's talk about topic number 3. So, Zeb, Seahawks Twitter is going crazy about this win, but you would think they lost. The manner in which people are going out. Shout out to Austin Slater for a great conversation on Twitter. I posted some stuff on the forum, so go to Hawkscast forum and check it out. But it's basically kind of like what's going on. And Zeb, I want to know, are 12s, the fan of the Seahawks, jealous of how other teams win?
I think generally, yeah. At least the ones that pay fairly close attention. There's a lot of 12s out there that go to the games or watch the games, but that's it. They don't really delve too much during the week into how things are going or pay too much attention to what's going on around the league. So those people, though they probably can still consider themselves 12s, I don't think they care so much. But with the Twitter guys, and God, I've started listening to Brock and Salk since they started doing the podcast, and you listen to those guys and you think this is one of Dennis Erickson's Seahawks teams. Like they have especially Salk, he's got so much negative to say, not just about the team, but about individual players and performances and stuff. And it's just weird to me.
Welcome to the rest of the world, man. Like Pacific Northwest reporters, like the media in the Pacific, so fan friendly normally that anytime somebody that's why Mike Salk was so good for Seattle, I thought.
Well, I know he's not good for me. I'd like to punch him, but this is the thing that I've dealt with.
You can't beat up a one-handed man.
He only has one hand.
He's got one hand and a half.
Huh. Well, then maybe I'll just slap him open-handed. I've dealt with this a lot because I've always watched the Seahawks very closely and then also paid a lot of attention to what else is going on in the league. And when I hear a casual fan who they're like we talked about earlier, they're upset that everything isn't perfect. And you have to explain to these people, look, that's just not the way it works most of the time. Every once in a while it does. And yeah, of course, teams like the Patriots make it look like it's easy to just be good all the time, but that's just typically not the way it works. So it's again, I don't know that we're as good as our record as like we talked about earlier, but we are where we're at. And I think to examine that too closely and feel negative about it is silly. Just be happy that we're where we're at this point. Hope for the best going forward. No reason to be negative about it.
That's pretty zen by Zen. Just live in the moment.
Right.
Appreciate the win.
That's all we got.
Yeah. That's all.
Tomorrow isn't promised. Unless you're Annie, then the sun will for sure come out.
It will tomorrow. Tomorrow's not coming back. I mean, I get it. I mean, when you watch the box scores, or these days you get like the Red Zone channel, and it feels like the Red Zone channel is every 30 seconds cutting to the 49ers game as they roll up 51 points. I get it. I mean, I'd like to play Madden all the time too, but
most people only watch highlights of other teams for the most part regularly. So of course it looks great. Yeah. You're not seeing all the crap that happened.
Right? It's like that Facebook, Twitter sort of effect on your normal life. Like you think everybody else has this amazing life because people don't talk about like their problems on Twitter unless they're drama queens.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't even know they have syphilis.
Right? You don't. Nobody writes like I came home and my wife was in bed with a plumber on Facebook. Well, not nobody. Most people.
Shout out to Ryan Davis. He probably would put that out there.
Yeah, even if it didn't happen.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, I get the sentiment, but I think people aren't I think people are really hard to satisfy. I think even like people are misleading themselves about what our two most recent Super Bowl seasons looked like. There were games that we didn't blow people away. There were games we lost that we should have won. There were games maybe we won that we should have lost, because every game's a struggle and every game's a new war and every's a new team. And that's why on a deeper level, Russell Wilson and so on say, every week the goal is to go 1-0, because every week's a brand new week. Just be happy, win or lose, win or lose, win or lose. Doesn't mean like don't evaluate. Doesn't mean you can't criticize some flaws or what you see to be flaws. We can all, we all get to discuss. That's the point of sports. We all get to have our opinions, but I think everybody should at least take some time to appreciate the win, because I didn't feel like people took even 30 seconds to appreciate the win versus Atlanta.
Yeah, they got to kneel it out. I mean, how great is that?
Yeah, it was just like immediately going on to, oh my God, Matt Schwab threw for 460 yards even though he's 30 years old. Well, the other way of looking at that is like, that dude's 30 years old, but he's still holding an NFL job. So obviously, he ain't all that bad. And we know what he's done in the past. And the one thing you get as you get older and older and older as a quarterback is you get a better eye. So he had to throw the millions of screens, and that's what he's good at. And it worked, and they got the yards. But it didn't translate into points, and it didn't translate into points fast enough. So once again, Aaron Rodgers, relax.
Do you think that if we don't get that fumble recovery, things could have been different?
No, because I think if that goes differently, then we call our plays differently as well. I feel like they go slightly more aggressive on the last possession. For example, they only had 4 possessions in the second
half. Yeah, and I think 2 of those possessions were wins.
For sure. And then one of them, like, it didn't work out literally because they got the last one is the only one you can say like, well, they could have done things differently. But yeah, if it had been a closer game on that last possession, they would have done things. 3rd and 6 wouldn't have been a run. Probably 2nd and 8 wouldn't have been a run. They would have gone more aggressive, because I think they had been demonstrated in the 3rd drive. We could still move if we really needed to move. But it was just like, burn that clock down. That every single drive they have is going to take 8 minutes, so they don't have enough time to win. So, but yeah, if they hadn't got that fumble, then you never know, like, where else is. That's also part of the game plan. The game plan is that your team can't run 40 plays in a row without making a major move. That's the play we're going to make. You can take a couple yards here. You can take a couple yards every play. We are gambling on the fact that we're going to play sound defense and you're going to have slightly less sound offense, and you're going to make a major mistake before we do.
Yeah.
Because we prepare, you do.
Against the quarterback that is Matt Schwab, who is a veteran, who is willing to take what a defense is giving him, it's going to give a lot of yards and a lot of opportunity. But the reason why he's a vet is also because, and not a legit starter, is that because he's going to make a mistake. He turned the ball over. He could have easily had another interception if Hakeem King had hands. I mean,
my prediction was so close to right. I said pick 6 for King. He had it in his hands.
Yeah, he just dropped it
right there, and he's like, "Fuck Ross."
Yeah. You didn't call him out. That's what it is. You gave him props before he deserved it, and it's like, I'm going to run with this shit. But quick shout out to the chat. Tony saying, I just want them to beat the tar out of someone. I hate the do just enough to win games. And I get that in the moment. I get that in the game. But once the game's over and the clock hits 0, I'm thinking about, like, wow, what happened? Like, what are we going to talk on the podcast? What do people think? But I think the problem is that when people are looking at what the team is, they're comparing it to the wrong thing. Rather than think about, okay, this is the 2019 team, this, like, well, what would the 2013 team do? What would the Patriots do? What would all these other teams do? And it's like, well, that's not what it is. We're the 2019 Seahawks, and we're doing just enough to win. And that's not enough for some people because of where they think that's going to lead to. But I also feel like you guys are saying, it's like they're looking at the box score, they're looking at highlight reels, they're looking at these big scores, but they're not looking at every game. They're not looking at the game where Green Bay, another 6-2 team, has to duke it out with Kansas City with their backup quarterback, and it's a 1-score game. They're not looking at other teams that are struggling to win games because, like we said earlier, those teams get paid to play and to win as hard as they can. And you don't get cupcakes every week. You don't get the Miami Dolphins day after day. We're not in the AFC East. You know, we're playing some good opponents that are going to win and have quality players. So I think, like you guys are saying, people are looking at the wrong way. I don't know how you convince them to look at it from another perspective because it's a perception issue. And on Twitter, I was having this discussion with Austin, and I sent the link to you guys, and Ross came to add to the discussion, and I think he kind of like, we weren't talking about the same thing, but our ideas were the same. It's like, you're looking at the wrong thing. And it came down to, well, what's happening on fourth down? We should be going for it here, and why do we kick there? And how come our offense is so lackluster? And it's like, you've already built a perception, and if you look at information, if you look at some stats or you look at some data, it easily crumbles apart. So it's more like people are just kind of going off a feeling rather than like looking at what actually happened.
I mean, some of it's real. I mean, like, for example, Austin has some numbers to back up what his opinion is, and they're legit numbers. But I think people, again, like I was kind of talking about it earlier, like people have these like theories they've built up recently where like the analytics is all the rage and it's fake analytics, and they have all these numbers they pull up. And the fact is, though, they think they're being scientific, but they're not looking at the real results. Because if it was real results, then I'd agree with you, for example, as well. But if your results don't match your theory, then your theory's wrong, right?
Right. It's like the thing that you pointed out where they say, like, oh, kickers are X percentage from 50 yards out, and that should be the reason why we go for it or not go for it. And it's like, no, that's not true, because each kicker has different ability. Different kickers play in different domes, different fields, different stadiums. So some are going to be better than others, and it's going to skew the data left and right.
I mean, it literally makes no difference if the Detroit Lions kicker made 5 for 5 or was 0 for 5 last year from inside the stadium, because that's not who our kicker is. We need to know whether our kicker, and if our kicker all week long in practice is making those, you got a real reason to believe make it.
Yeah,
that's a lot more relevant. And other things, you know, like really like this, they should be passing, but passing doesn't win you games, actually, as far as I can tell. I mean, and this goes all to like the 80s. I mean, Zeb, I'm sure you used to like watching like the San Diego Chargers back in like the 80s with Don Coryell and
sure did
Dan Fouts. Those were like amazing teams to watch. They were really fun to watch, right?
Yep.
Kellen Winslow, but they never won a Super Bowl. They never got to a Super Bowl. They usually flamed out first round of the playoffs because all they could do was pass. You can't just pass to win. You have to control the things. I think Pete Carroll is actually way ahead in real analytics, and he's looking at things that we don't even consider. We don't even know what he's considering real. Because this weekend, I don't think he was lying. He talked about the defense and said, you know what it's doing right now is fine. Even though it's even giving up things that I consider would have been relevant, like yards per play. You think... But he has boiled things down to like 10 things he thinks are important, and he's not going to share them. And as long as those 10 things are going right, he's comfortable.
Yeah. It's that whole idea that I don't need to start super hot. I need to know that I can finish. And that's kind of what this team does. They know how to finish. It's maybe not the way you want them to, but they do know how to finish. And I think that's one of their biggest credits. They're 4-0 on the road. It's the first time they've been 4-0 on the road since like the 1980s. So that is amazing. We might be destined for a wild card spot, and I would rather be in this position where we know how to play and win ugly games on the road in a less than stellar fashion than being this front-running team that has never been challenged and doesn't know how to adapt.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to know. I'd love to, like, sign a non-disclosure agreement and sit down with Pete Carroll for like an hour and find out what his current philosophy is. Because it's not perfect and everything is, you know, there's so many variables on the football field, but it's clear to me that he knows what he's doing. There's something to what he thinks.
No, for sure. And I think
no
that's
what the yards are or whatever. They win. They win.
Right.
It's not a coincidence. And it's not just, oh, well, we've got a quarterback. I mean, in a sense, it's, oh, the quarterback. But again, even that doesn't mean he's wrong, because that's part of his deal. Part of his deal is to have the right quarterback for his system, right?
Right, and I think that's what we see with this roster. Almost every single person on the team fits a Pete Carroll design personnel, you're not really seeing someone who doesn't fit with what they want to do, which is why they can put these 3 linebackers on the field. Michael Kendricks, for all his flaws, there's definitely plays where you see him like, oh, I wish he could have done better, or if he'd done certain things differently, it would have been better. But other teams are trying to scheme things and try and take advantage of our deficiencies as well. So we'll see that. But I do want to move on to topic number 4. And topic number 4, it's the return of the Kangol hat, guys. From the desert to the swamp, the Tampa Bay Bucs are coming. Are the Bucs a speed bump on the road to 7-2? Ross, I know you love Bruce Arians, and I want to ask, what's going to happen here with the Bucs coming to town? Are you worried about this team?
I'm not worried in the sense like, oh my God, I think we're going to lose. But I do think like you can't really disrespect any NFL team. I mean, except for maybe the ones that are trying to lose right now, and there's a lot to be. But, I mean, Tampa Bay overlooked them at your peril. I mean, Jameis Winston's not a leader, and that's his biggest failing as a quarterback. But that dude can sling it, and so that's dangerous. They have Mike Evans. That's the dude who's caught for 1,200 yards every year he's been in the NFL. That's a dangerous dude. They got some players, and if you overlook them, or if you relax for even one play, that's the thing in the NFL. That's why it's so hard. One play. T2's not back there to give it up, but give up 150-yard play and all of a sudden give him the score, and who knows how it's going to affect you the rest of the game. But they've got some players. Arians, as much as I like to think he's a complete idiot, he's not a complete idiot. He's like a 98% idiot. But that 2% sometimes works. So
yeah, he's done well in Seattle. So
yeah, I mean, and that dude has like a special hatred for Pete Carroll that I can't.
It's weird, right?
Although I thought I had some sweet insight given to me this week about that. But I mean, that dude like
so happy when he got that last win in Seattle and then like retired like the minute later. It's like retire as champion. Like he was talking about that. I remember that. It's such a weird thing.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's like us. It's so weird because I know somebody who knows him personally, and that person swears up and down to me that he's a good guy, and I just can't see it anywhere.
Oh, I mean, I never try to think about like the character of an individual because I'm sure most people are really nice. It really makes it harder to dislike someone if well, they're a good guy, so it shouldn't be too hard on them. But
I don't. The thing is, like, he doesn't. It's not just purely like on the football field stuff. I mean, he just does and says stuff that just makes me think you're not like a solid human being.
Yeah, from a football standpoint, for sure.
He'll talk about like not making excuses, then he'll constantly make excuses. I mean,
they worry Tony. Tony chime in and says they worry him. Zeb, if I were to ask you right now, what is the Bucs record if you don't know it off the top of your head? What would you say they're at?
Well, I do know it, so it's hard to.
Okay. Are you surprised that it's that record though?
A little bit. I thought earlier in the season they kind of looked like they'd put it together a little bit, and we're going to be halfway decent. And I mean, whatever. They've won 2 games. They don't scare me necessarily. Arians is an idiot. The guy thinks he's Vince Lombardi, but he's really like Bruce Coslet or Jim Mora. I don't know. Do I expect them to give us trouble? Yes, absolutely. It wouldn't surprise me if the game went very similarly to how the game against the Falcons did. But I don't think it's going to be the same type of thing when he used to be with the Cardinals. That's a division game. There was a rivalry type of thing going on there. Obviously, like Ross mentioned, he doesn't like Pete Carroll for some reason, which is weird. But I don't think it's going to be the same thing. The Bucs have given us trouble in Seattle before.
I mean, Super Bowl season where they took us to overtime, right?
Yeah, weird stuff.
That was Mike Glennon. Mike Glennon led Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Right. They were up like 21-0 on us or something like that at one point.
And after that, went on to star in Napoleon Dynamite.
Retroactively.
Hell of a career.
I would love to just beat the socks off them though, especially because of Bruce. It would be fantastic. That's what I would like to see. I'm sure they'll give us some trouble, but I expect that we'll be able to walk out of there with a win.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of like you guys, where I thought they were better than they were because they started the year 2-2, and then they've lost 3 in a row, so they're 2-5 right now. So I thought their record was better than they are, and I think that's the case where I'm looking at a box score, I'm looking at, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, having amazing fantasy numbers, usually because those guys are playing against my fantasy team and I'm losing, but there is definitely something about Bruce Arians and his dislike or hatred or whatever he feels about Pete Carroll that he tries really hard to beat him. And it's something that he's willing to pull out all these tricks. It's kind of like Jeff Fisher would always do like 100 trick plays or gadget plays against the Seahawks when he was the Rams coach. The Kangol hat kind of has that same vibe that he wants to like just rub it in Pete's face like all the time. And I kind of feel like this is a matchup where this is really going to be a great test for Seattle because this is a pass-heavy team. I don't think they have a quality running back on this team because there's just they can't do anything. So it's kind of playing to Seattle's strength in a sense that they want to stop your running game. But I don't know if Seattle is adept and equipped to handle what potentially is going to happen if we don't have a healthy secondary. If we don't have Trey Flowers, if Bradley McDougall's not playing, regardless of what you think about Tetrick, he was our starter. He's been IR'd right now. We don't have a full complement of our team. I am still assured that Seattle's going to win, but it could be close. I'm not saying it's a toss-up, but I'm saying it's like a 75-25 chance that we're going to win this game. That's my feelings.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Tony's saying it's going to be a higher scoring game than Atlanta. I do think that is. I think Seattle's going to need to score a lot in this game, more so than we've seen.
Really?
Yeah, I think that the way that this Bucs team wants to play, they definitely want to move the ball and they want to score. But
again, are they going to be able to do? There's a time limit in the game, and we get the ball some of the time, and I don't think we're going to be giving up long, deep passes. So, by definition, there's like a limit to how much they can score, isn't there?
Well, they scored 55 points against the Rams. I mean, I don't know how they did that.
The Rams don't have anybody in the secondary that's still upright.
Yeah, I mean they changed their entire secondary like overnight, so it'll be interesting if they play that game again. But yeah, I mean it's not like the Bucs are deficient of talent.
No, they have Godwin and they've got out there, and like you got to know where those dudes are at all time. I think they can score, but I think it's just gonna be similar to Atlanta. Like they can score, but if you got to move the ball down the field step by step by step, and then we're gonna get it, and we're gonna be able to run.
I think that's the thing. I think if we get our running game going, Atlanta doesn't have, or Tampa has no chance because they're just not going to have enough time on the clock because we're just going to like limit their possessions. We're just going to churn it out and make it hard for them.
Tampa Bay's supposed to be good against the run, but I feel like that's less about that and just more about that people have liked to pass on them.
And then the same thing, people were saying that about Atlanta last week. It's like, oh, Atlanta's actually a surprisingly good defense. So yeah, because you can't cover anyone, so people don't have to run on you. So we'll see. I mean, like I said, I'm not too worried about this game. I do think that Seattle, they don't need to be perfect, but they can't play like they have in their past home games against the Ravens and the Saints and like give away points. They can't do that. That's going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah, I do see. I mean, quite a few points. I don't see it as like a track meet type.
All right. Well, let's get into our predictions and we'll talk about how many points we're talking about here. All right. So, prediction number 1. Bring it. All right. So we're ready to bring it. And Ross, we're going to kick it off with you first. What's your final prediction for the score?
31-24.
Okay, 1-score game, 7 points. I can take it.
But I don't think it'll be like close. It's like they score like another touchdown in the last, whatever minutes. So it looks closer than it is.
Right on. Zeb, what score you got?
31-17.
You guys like
Oh,
the
you
30.
Price is right.
They don't get that last touchdown.
It's picked off in the end zone by Griff.
I'm gonna go lower. I'm gonna go in the 20s, but I'm gonna go high 20s. I'm gonna say 28-24. I think it is gonna be a closer game, but I think it's gonna be like Ross, where they're kind of scoring meaningless points because the game's hopefully well in hand. But that's our final score. Ross, yes or no? Does Russell Wilson's MVP season continue? He's basically 7 for 8 in MVP games this year. Is he making an 8th MVP game?
I'm going to go with yes. Because
reason. Perfect. Zeb.
I'm going to go with yes for the same reason.
I'm going to say that Russ is not going to be required to have that MVP game. He might have like a low-key 1 touchdown with maybe like 200 yards, but I'm thinking if we run the ball with Penny and Carson, it's really going to be the ground game that will control it for us.
I think there's going to be a lot of running. I just think that like the statistics are going to look better than they really were because I think Russ is going to like throw it into the end zone.
Yeah, he's still going to throw for 2 or 3 touchdowns.
He'll have like 100 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, and no picks.
Yeah, he'll be
180. Yeah, like 186 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks.
He'll be like 7 for 9. All right, Ross. Run game or pass game? What's going to be your dominant force for the Hawks?
Run game.
Okay.
2-headed monster.
Zeb?
Carson's going to eat.
Yeah, I'm with Zeb. I think it's going to be the run game. I really want to see Carson and Penny get some carries, get some love. I think that will be what will just set the game apart. Ross, who scores first? The run game, the pass game, special teams, or the defense? Any score.
Passing game. Yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, again, like I see like us getting the ball first, moving the ball down mostly on the ground, but then like from the 6-yard throw to DK Metcalf or maybe a tight end. Okay. Hollister, maybe get him a touchdown this year.
Zeb, who you got scoring first this game?
It's gonna be a pass. Lockett didn't get one last week, did he?
He did not. He had 6 catches for 100 yards though.
Well, there you go. I know we brought Ed Dixon off of he's back in the fold now, but I don't think he probably won't play this week, and I would imagine we'll see. If he's playing, he's scoring a touchdown.
Okay. I can see it. Tony's saying Metcalf, so he's saying the passing game. I'm actually going to one-up Tony and say Metcalf's going to run end around, even though he doesn't have the agility, and he's going to run it in for a touchdown.
Nice.
Who's going to be our yardage leader, though? Ross, is it going to be Lockett, Metcalf, Carson, or are you taking the field?
I'm taking the field.
Okay.
I'll go Carson.
I'm going to go Carson as well. I'm really looking into that running game, and I'm thinking that's going to be our edge. Tony's got Carson as well. Who's going to be our starting safeties between McDougal, Diggs, Blair, and anyone else?
Now it's kind of messed up because Diggs isn't back and T2's on IR because he's
and McDougal's kind of hurt too, right? Like he
had to come in like at last game off of the bench because Blair was hurt for a little bit, I believe.
Yeah,
cramps
or something.
Yeah, too much hitting, not enough water.
Bradley McDougal was a full participant in practice on Wednesday, so I think Bradley's going to have to play free safety. Oh, God, I don't want that.
Well, this isn't about what you want.
I know, but Blair... They had Blair... Oh, this isn't going to be good at all. This isn't the game you be playing Godwin and Evans then. I just realized.
Conflicted.
Man, I guess it's got to be McDougal at free safety and Blair at strong because you don't want to reverse that because Blair can't play both yet. I mean, he's still learning and he's probably focused on strong. So this is not like that's a little bit dangerous. Yeah, we're still going to see a lot of base defense this game. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess McDougal has to be his free safety. There's nobody else, right?
Unless Delano, they're going to
Delano.
That's the other, but Zeb,
That
who
dude-
do you
that
have
dude-
for your safeties?
I mean, I feel like it's probably going to just have to be that McDougald and Blair.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's just the lineup. If Diggs is still, nursing a hammy, I don't think he's going to see the field. I don't think they want to risk him getting hurt in a game that they feel that they've got some depth. Ross, over under 1.5 turnovers by Eat a W, Jameis Winston.
Over. 1 fumble, 1 interception.
Zeb?
Yep, over.
I'm going to say he's going to have 2 interceptions. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure this game, which will lead to another prediction. But over under, Ross, 2.5 forced turnovers by the Seahawks. They had 3 in the previous game.
Under.
Under? Just the 2 by Jameson.
Yeah.
Zeb, how many turnovers he got for the defense?
I'm liking the upward trend here. We'll go over.
I'm gonna say it's gonna be 2 like Ross. I think it's just gonna be Jameis has 2 interceptions, and that's gonna kind of be the end of it. But hopefully they can get some more.
We can get some fumbles this year.
They have been. They've been actually really good with the fumbles. Shout out to Ziggy and Clowney for that last one, and to Blair and Bobby for the other one.
Yep.
Ross, over under, are we going to see more than 1.5 sacks in this game?
Under.
Well, I'm going to try to will it into existence. Over.
You can't push on 1.5, so I'm going to be with Ross. I think that they are going to try to create like a modified game where they're just going to do quick passes and do a lot of slants, get the ball out quick, which won't give a chance to get sacks. But
Exactly.
if we control that clock and are running and they have to play catch up, they're going to have to hold on to that ball and maybe they get some sacks. But I think they're going to have to dump it off a lot, and that's going to be their game.
I mean, they don't have to. I mean, like Atlanta just refused to, right? They're just like, we need to move the ball on the field, but we're not going to. We're just going to keep doing screens and 6-yard to 12-yard ins. But
it's kind of because that's all they could do.
yeah, I mean, but like you would think they take a shot, but maybe Shaw can't take a shot of his career.
Yeah, I mean, he maybe has flashback throws of Richard Sherman eating his lunch. Who knows?
The one throw I remember of him that was going to go like 25 yards in the air got picked off. So
he had another one. Hakeem King really needed to get that ball. Unfortunately,
yeah, he did. He was going to make me look like a genius. I pick 6 just before that.
All right, well, that's the podcast for the day. Shout outs, gentlemen.
Shout out to the Socialist Rifle Association. I am with you, comrades.
Oh, okay. Does that bring in any demographic to the field?
Reaching out. Shout out to Jack, the king of Halloween Land or whatever it's called.
Pumpkin King.
Nice. Pumpkin King.
Oh, the
Love
Pumpkin
it.
King. Yes.
Skeleton King. Love it.
Shout out to the Charlie Brown Halloween special, which is the second best of the Charlie Brown specials, or peanut specials, whatever they're called.
Oh, okay. The Great Pumpkin.
Yeah, the Great Pumpkin.
Nice.
Second best. The Christmas one's the best.
That tree. That miserable little tree.
Doesn't anybody understand the real meaning of Christmas?
Stop going
All right, that was a
going full Linus on us. Shout out to Tony and his Sounders. They're going to be hosting the MLS Cup next Sunday, the day before Seahawks play on Monday night.
Versus who?
They're going to be hosting Toronto FC. So this of the past 4 MLS Cups, it has been the Seattle Sounders versus Toronto FC. Previously, the first game, Seattle won on penalty kick in Toronto. The following year, they lost to Toronto. And then now we're in year 4 of this matchup, and it's the first time it's going to be hosted in Seattle. So I know the Sounders fans are happy, and congrats to their fans. Shout out to people for checking us out online. Please go to hawkscast.com, check out the forum. You can find us on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast and Seahawks Forum. Shout out to Ciara and her great Instagram of her and Russell Wilson. So check that out if you're not on Twitter. But we're the Hawkscast Podcast. I am Sam. There's Zeb and Ross. And go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
The Hawks.